In a development that has stunned both industry insiders and fans alike, the story surrounding Disney's live-action Snow White adaptation has taken a dramatic turn, unfolding into a complex web of behind-the-scenes tension, legal maneuvering, and public fallout. Reports indicate that initial signs of trouble began subtly, with awkward red carpet appearances and canceled interviews, but quickly escalated as insider sources revealed growing animosity between stars Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler. This tension, initially dismissed as standard Hollywood friction, reportedly deepened over creative differences, with Zegler advocating for a bold reimagining of the iconic tale, while Gadot preferred a more traditional homage. The friction allegedly intensified during press events, where body language and stiff interactions raised eyebrows. As the press tour progressed, the situation became increasingly difficult to contain, with Disney executives holding emergency meetings to manage the narrative. The studio's attempt to produce a behind-the-scenes commentary track was abandoned, signaling just how serious the conflict had become. Amidst the unraveling publicity campaign, legal threats were reportedly issued by Gadot's team in response to Zegler's alleged plans to speak out publicly, ultimately forcing a retreat from Zegler's media efforts and contributing to a growing perception of instability surrounding the project. Now, with reputations on the line and promotional plans in behind the smiles, tension on set, the tension between Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler reportedly began long before the public ever suspected. Simmering quietly during the early days of filming, sources close to the production alleged that differences in artistic vision created an uncomfortable atmosphere on set, where collaboration gave way to competing ideologies. Zegler is said to have pushed for a radical reinterpretation of Snow White, infusing the story with contemporary themes and political messaging, while Gadot favored a more balanced modernization that preserved the spirit of the original. These creative disagreements, while initially contained, reportedly led to growing frustration and distance between the actresses. Cast and crew began noticing the lack of chemistry during joint scenes and interviews, where stiff posture and forced smiles suggested more than just routine press fatigue. According to insiders, Disney's top brass was alerted to the growing divide and began quietly adjusting promotional plans, attempting to limit joint appearances and reduce opportunities for on-camera awkwardness. Despite efforts to project a united front, the underlying strain reportedly worsened, turning what should have been a blockbuster collaboration into a logistical challenge. By the time promotional content was being edited, entire segments had to be reworked or discarded to hide the discord. The working relationship, once hailed as a coup for Disney's progressive branding, had become a case study in how unchecked tension can derail a high-stakes production. The PR fallout begins as the promotional tour for Snow White unfolded. The cracks in Disney's carefully orchestrated image became impossible to ignore. Fans picked up on subtle cues: uncomfortable glances, disengaged body language, and clipped responses that hinted at deeper issues. It wasn't long before media outlets began speculating on the deteriorating relationship between the film's two leads. Rachel Zegler's remarks during interviews, particularly those criticizing elements of the original Snow White tale, sparked immediate backlash across social platforms. Critics accused her of undermining the film's legacy, while defenders argued she was championing modern values. In contrast, Gal Gadot maintained a notably quiet profile, avoiding controversial statements and sticking to safe promotional talking points. This stark difference in approach only fueled rumors that the two stars were at odds. The situation escalated further when Zegler abruptly canceled several appearances, including high-profile interviews and talk show segments. Behind the scenes, Disney executives reportedly scrambled to regain control of the narrative, fearing that public infighting could jeopardize the film's reception. Crisis meetings were held and damage control strategies were deployed, including attempts to re-edit existing promo materials to soften the tension. Despite these efforts, the PR crisis had already taken hold, and the Snow White campaign began to unravel. The story was no longer about the film, it was about the feud, politics, and personality clashes beyond creative disagreements. Deeper ideological differences reportedly intensified the rift between Zegler and Gadot. Zegler, known for her vocal activism on social media, frequently used her platform to comment on contemporary social and political issues. Meanwhile, Gadot, a former IDF soldier and vocal supporter of Israel, represented a more conservative stance in Hollywood's liberal-leaning ecosystem. These divergent perspectives allegedly led to uncomfortable conversations on set and off, with insiders suggesting that what began as professional tension evolved into personal distrust. While neither actress publicly addressed these differences, those close to the production described an increasingly strained dynamic during downtime. And in green rooms, efforts to encourage camaraderie between the two stars reportedly fell flat, and Disney's PR teams found themselves repeatedly editing out moments that hinted at visible discomfort. As the press tours wore on, these ideological tensions reportedly seeped into every interaction, with off-the-cuff remarks being parsed by fans and critics alike. The result was a growing sense that Snow White had become less of a film release and more of a cultural battleground, with two opposing figures symbolizing larger societal divides. Disney's attempt to bridge the gap with a modern reimagining had, ironically, highlighted the very divisions it hoped to transcend. The legal line gets drawn. What had been a simmering conflict erupted into a full-blown legal drama when Rachel Zegler allegedly prepared to go public with her experience filming Snow White. Insiders claim her team had lined up sympathetic media outlets and planned a coordinated release of interviews detailing her perspective, including allegations that Gal Gadot was difficult on set and had contributed to a toxic work environment. But before the campaign could launch, Gadot's legal team reportedly took swift and calculated action. According to multiple sources, 3 separate legal warnings were issued to Zegler's representatives, each clearly stating that any defamatory statements would be met with immediate legal retaliation. The effect was both immediate and chilling. Within days, Zegler's scheduled appearances were pulled, including a podcast interview titled Rachel's Side of the Story and a high-profile talk show segment. Industry observers noted the sudden shift in tone as Zegler, once a prominent voice in the press circuit, seemingly disappeared overnight. Some interpreted her silence as a legal necessity. Others saw it as an admission that the narrative she had hoped to present wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. Regardless of interpretation, Gadot's legal maneuvering was widely viewed as a successful preemptive strike one that protected her image and silenced her detractor without a single word spoken publicly. Disney's silent panic in the aftermath of the escalating legal conflict, Disney found itself in a precarious position, caught between 2 stars with diverging agendas and a film at the center of a media storm. Executives at the studio reportedly held a series of crisis meetings to discuss how to salvage the situation, exploring options from reshoots to a complete overhaul of the film's promotional strategy. One plan involved recording a behind-the-scenes commentary track featuring Gadot, Zegler, and co-star Andrew Burnap for Disney Plus, intended to present a unified front and reframe the narrative with warmth and nostalgia. However, that plan was quietly shelved when Zegler allegedly withdrew participation following the legal threats. Disney's internal PR team, recognizing the potential fallout, opted to scrub any marketing materials that featured the actresses together. Additional features, including cast interviews and digital exclusives, were either heavily edited or canceled entirely. According to insiders, the decision was framed as damage control, with one executive reportedly stating, "The less we show of the cast together, the better." This retreat from standard promotional practices was unusual for Disney, a studio known for its extensive marketing campaigns. The message was clear. The situation had spiraled too far out of control for standard playbooks to work. Zegler retreats. Reputation cracks. Following the legal intervention by Gal Gadot's team, Rachel Zegler's rapid retreat from the public eye sent shockwaves through the industry. Her once active social media presence became noticeably quiet. Planned interviews were indefinitely postponed, and her publicist's messaging came to a halt. Insiders close to major talent agencies and production studios began expressing doubts about Zegler's reliability, with some labeling her a rising star who failed to manage the spotlight under pressure, while her supporters argued that she was unfairly targeted by internet trolls and sensationalist media. Others in the entertainment world pointed to her sudden withdrawal as evidence that her narrative might not withstand legal scrutiny. Rumors. spread that Zegler had underestimated the power and preparedness of Gadot's legal team, and without a clear path forward, she was left without options. Industry professionals reportedly began distancing themselves, wary of being entangled in a controversy that was quickly becoming a liability. "You can survive a box office flop," one executive was quoted as saying, "but you can't survive making enemies on your way down." Zegler's silence, while possibly a strategic legal move, was interpreted by many as an admission of overreach. What was once positioned as a redemption arc now appeared to be a collapse in strategy, leaving her team scrambling to repair the damage. Within weeks, the buzz around her career shifted from excitement to caution, painting a picture of a young actress who had lost control of her story and was now dealing with the Gadot single quotes as silent victory, in stark contrast to the turbulence surrounding Rachel Zegler. Gal Gadot managed to navigate the Snow White controversy with an approach that industry insiders have praised as both composed and strategic. While refraining from public accusations or social media spats, Gadot's legal team's swift and quiet action delivered a powerful message, one that restored control without fanning the flames. Following the dispute, Gadot continued appearing at red carpets and industry events, presenting an image of stability and professionalism. Her calm demeanor during press engagements, coupled with carefully chosen words that alluded to challenging co-stars without naming names, solidified her reputation as someone who prioritizes dignity over drama. This approach, industry experts say, has resonated strongly within Hollywood's executive circles. Casting directors and producers reportedly see Gadot's handling of the situation as evidence of her long-term viability and media savvy. She avoided becoming the face of a failed film, instead emerging as a figure of measured leadership. Insiders even claimed that Gadot's name was floated for future high-profile roles, partially due to how she protected her brand during the Snow White fallout. Her silence, far from a retreat, was seen as a calculated decision, one that allowed the controversy to burn out without her adding fuel. In a world where a public image can be destroyed in a single tweet, Gadot's restraint proved to be her greatest asset, positioning her as a professional capable of weathering storms without compromising her standing. The bigger picture, a Hollywood warning. The Snow White debacle has evolved beyond a simple celebrity feud or a box office misfire. It now serves as a warning to studios across Hollywood about the dangers of mismanaging talent, underestimating behind-the-scenes tensions, and ignoring the complexities of modern branding. Disney's ambitious attempt to reinvent a beloved classic for a new generation became a cautionary tale about the risks of mismatched casting and conflicting ideologies. What was supposed to be a crowning moment for progressive storytelling devolved into an internal conflict that played out in public view. Executives reportedly underestimated the volatile combination of Zegler's political outspokenness and Gadot's more conservative persona, hoping the film's legacy and production value would overshadow any friction. Instead, those very differences became the story, overwhelming the film's intended message. For an industry driven by image, optics, and public perception, the fallout has been sobering. The failure to foresee and mediate the conflict between its stars left Disney scrambling to contain damage that some argue was avoidable with better leadership and clearer boundaries. Analysts now say the situation could influence how future projects are cast and managed, particularly when it comes to pairing actors with publicly known opposing worldviews. It's a reminder that in today's hyper-connected media ecosystem, off-screen drama often overshadows on-screen narratives. Hollywood may be built on fantasy, but it runs on reputation, and reputations, once fractured, are difficult to repair. In the end, Disney's Snow White reboot didn't just suffer from poor reviews or underwhelming box office numbers. It collapsed under the weight of internal conflict, poor crisis management, and the brutal transparency of modern celebrity culture. Rachel Zegler, once seen as a bold new face for the brand, found herself isolated, her voice silenced not by a studio gag order, but by a legal strategy she didn't anticipate. Gal Gadot, meanwhile, emerged largely unscathed, her quiet professionalism winning her admiration while the controversy faded. The legal chess game between the actresses, compounded by failed promotional plans and a media landscape hungry for scandal, turned a cinematic release into an unplanned reality drama. Disney's retreat from normal marketing procedures, including the scrapping of commentary tracks and joint interviews, signaled that this feud wasn't just disruptive, it was damaging. What was meant to celebrate a timeless story of innocence and redemption became an example of modern Hollywood's most pressing challenges: political polarization, social media warfare, and the unrelenting scrutiny of public image. In a business where perception is power, the Snow White disaster reminded everyone from fans to executives that sometimes the most powerful message isn't what's said on screen, but what's left unsaid behind the scenes.